My parents demanded I pay for my sister's third wedding after her first two bankrupted them. I, 33 am, grew up in a quiet suburban neighborhood with my father, mother, and older sister. From the outside, we looked like a typical family. My father worked long hours at a local business, my mother managed the household and occasional side jobs, and my sister and I bickered like normal siblings. But below the surface, my parents had a long-standing habit of bending over backward to keep my sister happy. Throughout our childhood, my sister and I had the usual arguments: who got to control the TV remote, who got the bigger slice of cake, but my parents almost always took her side. I accepted it as normal and figured maybe they saw me as more independent. It never occurred to me that their behavior might foreshadow bigger issues once we were adults. Things escalated when my sister and I grew up. She developed expensive tastes, drawn to designer clothes, exotic vacations, and high-end gadgets. My parents, ever eager to please her, ignored their own financial limitations to keep her in the lifestyle she wanted. Meanwhile, I relied on scholarships and part-time jobs to pay my way through college. I appreciated the small help my parents did offer, but I never expected them to go broke for me. Then came my sister's first wedding. She announced she'd found her perfect match and wanted an extravagant ceremony in an upscale hotel. Costs for the venue, catering, and decor soared. I remember my father wincing every time he signed a check, and my mother rationalizing it as a once-in-a-lifetime event. That wedding tore a massive hole in their savings. Not 2 years later, that marriage ended. My sister shrugged it off, saying it just wasn't meant to be. I felt terrible for my parents, who were now shouldering wedding debt on top of regular bills. But my sister soon met another man whom she insisted was her true love. By the time they announced engagement number 2, my parents were still recovering financially from the first wedding. Yet they rallied their remaining resources and even borrowed further to fund another lavish event. This one was a destination wedding with over-the-top decor, costing even more than the first. My father looked exhausted, my mother stressed, but neither wanted to disappoint her. That second marriage lasted barely a year. The divorce turned ugly, and the financial strain on my parents was devastating. They nearly lost their home and ultimately downsized to a cramped apartment. I tried to help however I could, pitching in for groceries or small bills, but their money problems were immense. Somehow, though, they refused to blame my sister, instead calling it bad luck or insisting they just wanted her to be happy. Fast forward to a few months ago. I moved to another city, working a stable job and earning a decent income. My parents were still in that small apartment, struggling every month. One afternoon, my father called. After some awkward small talk, he told me my sister was engaged again. Trying not to roll my eyes, I listened as he explained that she wanted a fresh start with a proper wedding, 3rd time's the charm, as he put it. Then came the kicker: your mother and I need you to cover most of the expenses. I was stunned. Did they really expect me to finance her third wedding after the first 2 had bankrupted them? My father claimed it would be modest compared to the previous ones, but the amount he mentioned still made my head spin. I promised to think about it just to end the call, but deep down, I already knew my answer. In the days that followed, I wrestled with conflicting feelings. My parents had given me a stable upbringing in many ways, and part of me felt guilty for not wanting to help them in their time of need. But this was my sister's third wedding. The first 2 had destroyed my parents financially. Now they wanted me to step in and shoulder yet another round of expenses. Hoping for a more reasonable take, I called my mother. She was busy gushing about how my sister was already looking at new venues and caterers. When I gently suggested a low-key ceremony, like a simple courthouse wedding or even a modest backyard gathering, my mother balked. "We can't do that," she said. "Your sister deserves a proper wedding. What would people think?" Her words confirmed it was more about appearances than practicality. I asked if my sister had any savings. My mother dismissed the idea immediately, saying my sister had been through so much and couldn't afford much herself. I had to wonder how 2 expensive divorces plus a luxurious lifestyle translated into me footing the bill for a third grand event. Still, I decided on a direct conversation. We scheduled a call with my sister present. After some awkward greetings, she dove into excited chatter about themes, the reception, and a dream honeymoon. It was like her previous disasters had vanished from memory. I interrupted, saying plainly, "I can't pay for this. It's not my responsibility." She paused, then retorted, "You make good money. You can afford it. That line stung. I reminded her that I had worked hard to save for my own goals, maybe buying a house or investing in my future. She called me stingy. My father chimed in, insisting that since I was the only one in the family with stable finances, I should help out of compassion. My mother echoed him, saying it was time for me to give back. Their argument felt manipulative, especially since I had already sent them money here and there to cover necessities. Now, that apparently wasn't enough. I shifted the focus. What about your new fiancé? Is he contributing? An uncomfortable silence followed. My sister eventually admitted he was between jobs. It felt eerily like a repeat of her past marriages, where she picked partners who contributed little financially, and my parents picked up the slack. Now I was supposed to do the same. The tension mounted until I finally said, "I'm sorry, but I'm not paying for this wedding." My sister began crying theatrically, accusing me of ruining her day. My mother scolded me for hurting her feelings. My father sighed about how disappointed he was. Then came the classic guilt line, "After all we've done for you." It was too much. I hung up before the fight escalated further. Within minutes, I started getting texts from aunts, uncles, and cousins telling me I was turning my back on the family. My sister had clearly wasted no time spinning the story to anyone who would listen. The guilt tripping was relentless, but I tried to hold my ground. Unfortunately, it was only the start of their campaign. In the subsequent days, the pressure amplified. My aunt called to plead for family unity. One uncle left a voicemail implying that I owed my parents because they had laid my foundation in life. Even distant cousins I barely knew messaged me, suggesting I was heartless. It became obvious my parents and sister were leveraging the entire extended family to shame me into paying for wedding number 3. Adding insult to injury, my sister began pushing a new narrative that I was morally responsible for fixing my parents' financial wreckage, on the twisted grounds that if I'd intervened earlier, they wouldn't be so broke. To some relatives unfamiliar with the details, it sounded plausible. But for me, it was infuriating. I never asked them to spend beyond their means. My stress levels soared. I was distracted at work, constantly checking my phone to see what new accusations were flying my way. My best friend noticed I was on edge and took me out for a beer. I vented about how my sister treated me like an ATM. My parents enabled her every whim, and now everyone was hounding me to fix a problem they'd created themselves. "You have to stand your ground," my friend said. "Nobody else will protect your interests if you don't." His words reminded me that I wasn't crazy or cruel for refusing. Despite everything, I worried my parents might do something drastic, like try to open a line of credit in my name or co-sign me without permission, so I froze my credit reports and changed my banking passwords. It might have been overkill, but I wasn't willing to risk identity theft or a pile of unauthorized debt. Then came a brief glimmer of hope. My mother called, speaking calmly for once. She said they understood my concerns and just wanted me to visit so we could talk it out. Against my better judgment, I agreed to drop by their small apartment. The place was cluttered, with bills and letters scattered on the table. My father looked older than his years, and my mother tried to play the gracious host. My sister sat there, arms crossed, clearly annoyed. After some forced small talk, my mother began her softer pitch. "We really need your help. Your sister deserves a proper wedding, and we can't do it alone." My father piled on with, "Think of the sacrifices we made for you." My sister chimed in, "I can't believe you're going to ruin my special day." I stayed calm. "I'm sorry, but it's not my job to pay for a third wedding," I said firmly. "You need to find a more realistic way to celebrate." My sister exploded, calling me a terrible brother. My mother started crying. My father gestured at the bills, complaining how deep in debt they already were. He then looked at me with a mix of anger and desperation, accusing me of cruelty because I had the money. It was an emotional ambush. Realizing the conversation was heading nowhere, I stood up to leave. My sister hurled more insults, my mother sobbed louder, and my father glared at me like I was a traitor. Stepping out that door, I felt both guilt and relief. I wasn't caving, but it hurt like hell to see my family in such a state. Soon after, my parents tried a last-ditch plan. They claimed they might take out loans but needed a co-signer since their credit was shot. My mother pitched this idea over the phone as if it were reasonable. The notion that I'd risk my good credit for a third wedding was absurd. I firmly declined. That's when the threats started. My sister texted me, warning that if I didn't help, her wedding would be postponed indefinitely, as if that should devastate me. When I didn't respond, she sent a longer tirade, calling me cold and selfish, and saying I'd be dead to her if I didn't pay. She even threatened to tarnish my reputation with family friends, claiming I was an ungrateful son who refused to help his struggling parents. By then, I was more tired than outraged. I forwarded her messages to my best friend, who reiterated how toxic and manipulative this was. Determined not to be bullied, I stuck to my refusal. If they escalated further, like attempting fraud or forging my name, I'd have recourse through the law. Fortunately, they never took it that far. Word soon spread that my sister might have to scale down or postpone her wedding. Some relatives who had berated me before now expressed confusion or even offered apologies. Apparently, they'd learned the full extent of my sister's demands. Others still felt family should help family, but I stood my ground. I was willing to help my parents with essentials, but not to finance a lavish wedding they couldn't afford. Then came a sobering twist. My parents, sounding desperate, admitted they needed money just to keep up with everyday bills. My father even lamented paying for the second wedding, saying he wished he'd never done it. It sounded like genuine regret, though it didn't erase the damage already done. I offered a compromise. I would help cover a few of their essential household bills for a limited time, on the explicit condition that not a penny would go toward my sister's new ceremony and that they'd stop pressuring me about wedding costs altogether. My parents reluctantly agreed. My sister, however, blew up when she heard, accusing me of sabotaging her special day. I reminded her that I owed her nothing. As for revenge, once my sister started spreading lies about me, I calmly shared the facts with anyone who asked, including screenshots of her texts demanding money and threatening me. Faced with proof, some of her biggest defenders fell silent. A few reached out to me directly, shocked at how manipulative she'd become. In the end, my sister was forced to hold a modest ceremony at a local community hall. No opulent reception, no exotic honeymoon. My parents, while still in a financial hole, at least realized they couldn't keep enabling her. Meanwhile, I continued providing them small amounts for basic needs, making sure they understood I would not be dragged into any further luxury expenditures. I've come to terms with my decision. It was agonizing to stand against my own family, but absolutely necessary for my well-being. Sometimes people have to face the repercussions of their own choices, no matter how difficult that might be to watch. My sister's third wedding was a shadow of what she wanted, but maybe that's the wake-up call she needed. If not, that's not my burden to carry. I'm at peace now. If they ever try the same tactics again, I'll shut it down just as firmly. It's harsh, but when someone repeatedly expects you to dig them out of a financial hole they created, walking away can be the healthiest and most legally sound option.